Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forms. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with his authors in realizing a book's potential.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Writer's Corner. I am Rob Jung, sitting in for Alan Miller today, which gives me the opportunity to interview two of Minnesota's top-notch writers. On my immediate left would be Gary Porter, and one seat over is Shawn Otto. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Shawn is a writer of multi-genres, both fiction, nonfiction. You've been called a science writer. You've been a mystery writer. You've written a book about, actually I think you edited an anthology. Let me get the title right on this one. It's called Writers in United for All Families, 17 Original Works for Love and Liberty. And in addition, Shawn is a playwright, screenwriter, I guess you would say.
Right.
Wrote the screenplay for the movie House of Sand and Fog, which won 3 Academy, or not won 3 Academy Awards, nominated for 3 Academy Awards, starring Ben Kingsley. Macalester College grad. Let's see, married to wife Rebecca, live in Marine on St. Croix now. And you designed and built by hand your own green home.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, we'll talk more about that later. Gary is an author of 4 books. I got to get these right. Duffy, The Tale of a Terrier.
Yes.
Griff, The Story of a College Mascot Bulldog. And most recently, Little Rex, A Night at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And also a memoir of his life growing up in a small town.
My small town in Iowa.
Small town in Iowa. Graduate of Drake University.
I am.
Professor at various places. St. Thomas, Loyola Chicago, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
Wrote books on the college level books on accounting, and then became a middle grade writer about dogs. He and his wife live in, where do you live? Hudson, Wisconsin. You ventured across the
St.
creek
Croix.
to join us. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
First question, Gary, what was the inciting incident for you to move from writing accounting books to writing about dogs?
Well, never heard that one before.
That's, believe it or not, Robin, again, thanks for having us on this program. Since I started doing more creative writing, that's always the first question that comes out, the question you just asked.
Shows how creative I am.
Yeah. That's right. And the honest answer is that once I retired from full-time teaching accounting my whole career, I had a yearning to write more creatively. And I started writing about dogs. The first book, Duffy, which we have here, was based on, it's faction, my wife calls it, but it was based on our life with our first rescue dog, Duffy. And this is actually now the book we're going to be talking more about today, Little Rex, is a prequel to that book, Duffy. But that's what got me started in writing in a dog's voice. But the answer I a lot of times give at book events of all sorts, libraries and at schools, is that it doesn't matter whether you're writing about debits and credits, the accounting equation, or whether you're writing about your lost dog and your next one coming up. It's all about engaging an audience, right? We all know that as writers, you have to find some way to engage the audience and get them excited. And it was always a challenge to get kids excited about debits and credits, but I found ways to do that. And then I kind of carried that over into getting, especially again, kids excited about their pets and those that they hold so dear.
Terrific. Shawn, you did a segue as well from science writing. Explain that a little bit. First of all, before we talk about the segue, talk about science writing.
Well, what would you like to know?
Well, I know you've written a couple books about what you characterize as the decline of science in both the business world and in the political world.
Yeah, well, one's called The War on Science. Science writing is really communicating, kind of taking the technical stuff that scientists work on and communicating it to the broader public. And what I like to say is, in general, like the theme through all my writing, I kind of write about the American dream. House of Sand and Fog is an immigrant story. The War on Science is about the ties between science and democracy and how freedom is reliant on our ability to tie things to a common sense of truth. Sins of Our Fathers is about conflicts over power in a northern Minnesota native reservation. So all of these questions about who has the right to have freedom and how do we define that and how do we look at that. So the segue is kind of a theme, there's a thematic through line to everything. Mm-hmm. It's just looking at those kinds of questions that make America great in different ways.
I should just add that I have outlined a book years ago called Sins of the Father that is sitting quietly in some drawer someplace that I haven't followed through on. So,
okay, well, I'm kind of lucky then that I got mine out first.
So, Gary, you had mentioned what I think before we went on the air about a future book. Let's talk about Rex first.
Yeah,
let's talk about Rex in the cemetery.
Little Rex at the cemetery.
And then tell us about your future book.
Well, thank you. Little Rex, as I said a minute ago, is really a prequel. Rex, the fictional dog, meets our real dog Duffy up in heaven. And Rex is quite literary because he is a Boston Terrier, so he's from out east. And before long, in the Duffy book, the two figure out how to get Duffy's story back to Earth. And they do eventually get that. And it has to do with Rex's master back in Boston being in the book business. He's an editor back there. He eventually gives up Rex for adoption because of a girlfriend that's allergic to dogs. But at any rate, what happens is my wife Melissa says, you've got to write Rex's story. He must have quite a story of his own. So that's how Rex ended up out in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. I decided he wanders around looking for nourishment. Times are tough on the streets of Boston. He's just a dog on the run now with the other big guys. And so he just stumbles upon Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, which is the real cemetery in Concord, Massachusetts. And he ends up on the night of the Day of the Dead when all of the authors come out once a year. And there is in that cemetery, my wife and I visited on a research trip a couple years ago, there's an area called Author's Ridge. And amazingly, on that little patch of ground up there are buried Louisa May Alcott and her family, of course, of Little Women, Henry David Thoreau and all of his family, Walden fame, of course, Nathaniel Hawthorne, House of Seven Gables, Scarlet Letter, and kind of the sage, as they call him, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And so the story is all about this night that they come up once a year, as I said, and explore their town and how fun it would be to show the little Boston Terrier all of their haunts. So they make a stop at where the shot heard round the world that Emerson immortalized to start the Revolutionary War, and then they make stops all around the spots in town where they all lived all those years back in the mid-1800s. And of course, we can talk about it a little bit later. It's got a tie to Shawn's interest in science. They make a stop out at Walden Pond. So that's what that book is about.
I find it amazing that all those people are buried in one cemetery.
Yeah.
It is, because at the time, I always like to bring this up because it's got a tie to one of that collection of essays I wrote about growing up in Greenfield, Iowa. That town has always been about 2,000. It's never changed much from when I was growing up there. In the mid-1800s, that was the size of Concord, Massachusetts. And to think that 4 of the most influential authors of American literature lived there at that same time.
Yeah.
I was in Florence, Italy, in a cathedral, and you could literally, the crypts are below the floor, and you could literally, if you laid flat down and spread yourself out like that, you could touch the crypts of Michelangelo, Niccolo Machiavelli,
Wow.
and 2 other, Renaissance era notables. It was just, but it sounds
Similarity
like
there.
similarities.
Yeah.
We'll have to write a book like Outliers, only about cemeteries, or things like that. Shawn, well, wait a minute. We didn't get to your next book.
Well, I've got ideas. I
Oh,
wouldn't say
okay.
there's anything. I've made notes. I've got a couple of different ideas. I love biographies. I probably read myself more biography than anything else. And one recent idea, I won't say too much more about it because it's in the really early stages, is a biography that's also set in the mid-1800s. It has connections to 3 different continents, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Wow.
Shawn, tell us about Sins of the Father was the most recent mystery.
Yep, I got another one coming out this year.
Yeah, let's talk about Sins of the Father first, and then what's coming
okay.
up.
All right. Sins of Our Fathers.
Sins
Yep.
of Our Fathers.
So that's originally that was a screenplay that I wrote that I was setting up to direct, and our financing deal fell through. And I decided to write it as a novel because I loved the story so much and couldn't let it go. And it's a story of a banker in northern Minnesota who's kind of down on his luck. He's fallen into a gambling addiction to deal with some personal issues. And he gets maneuvered into a situation by an unscrupulous boss who forces him to try to undermine a new bank that is being set up on the local Indian reservation, which is going to compete with the town bank and the town banking system. And that is being spearheaded by a guy named Johnny Eagle, who is a visionary banker who built his career early on working for big Minneapolis bank, maybe a place like U.S. Bank or something like that, and then moved back north and is trying to be a good citizen and improve his community. And so it sets up this clash between these 2 guys that escalates.
And what's your new book, and when is it coming out?
The new book is called Battleground States, and it's a novel, also it's fiction. It takes some of the same ideas in the war on science and it extends them. It's set 10 years after the outbreak of the Second American Civil War.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a kind of a speculative fiction set in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And it explores a lot of the ideas that are kind of driving polarization right now in society, and also a lot of science ideas, like what if AI, for instance, starts delivering personalized messages to people on social media for political purposes, and how do we tell the difference between truth and reality? And a woman is trying to make it through this kind of war-ravaged area because at that point in time, the U.S. is broken up into 5 different countries, and the Midwest, being the most closely politically divided, is still caught in a lot of conflict. So she is trying to get out of this area with her son.
Okay. And when is that?
Hopefully,
Do you have a release date?
hopefully late this year, possibly early next year. It just kind of depends on the publisher's production schedule.
Okay. I'm really curious about your writing styles, how you go about doing this, whether it's changed from nonfiction to fiction, whether, so Shawn, how do you go about writing your books?
Well, for me, and it may be different for Gary, but for every writer, and for you, but for me, I always think about the arc of a narrative. Even writing nonfiction, it's got to have a narrative arc. In the case of the War on Science, it was exploring this question of how did we get to this point where science became so political and became a political football, and just looking at that and trying to build the argument, both sides of the argument, back and forth, so you get this kind of pendulum swing in your argument as you build the story. And the story in a nonfiction book is kind of cycling closer and closer to what the answer to that question is, right? And in fiction, it's kind of the same thing. You present a question, and then you kind of explore both sides of it. You try to have a protagonist that embodies one perspective and an antagonist or an antagonistic forces that, embody the other perspective, and you swing back and forth, and you try to be really truthful to both points of view. And that makes a good story in my book.
But do you have a regular schedule that you write on, or do you have
wish I did.
Place that, yeah.
There's.
You have a place that you always write. Is there?
I do have a place that I always write. I know some writers, tend to write 2 pages a day, and that's it. And they're just religious about that. Even if they're in the middle of a sentence, they stop. And for them that works. It keeps their mind kind of bubbling along in the background, thinking about, how am I going to conclude that and move on? For me, I tend to be more obsessive compulsive about writing. When I'm in the story, it just feels like to me there's so many balls that I'm juggling to kind of keep in the air that I don't want to lose track of. And if I stop too soon, then I worry that I'm going to drop some of those balls. So I tend to write for 12 hours a day when I'm really in it.
When you're into it.
Yeah.
How about you, Gary? What's your
Well,
process?
in terms of where and when, I do a lot of my writing at one of our libraries, a couple of our libraries, either Hudson or River Falls, and I like just getting away somewhere, away from the house. I do some of my writing at home, but there, and I'm not a late evening writer at all, as my wife can tell you. I seem to do best early in the day. On the subject of how do you write, when people ask you how you get your ideas, I don't know if this is the case with you, Shawn, but there's 2 places that most of my ideas come from. One is out on the roads if we're doing some jogging. Some creative juices start flowing. Or the others on the John Deere mower in the backyard where there's no distinct distractions of any sort whatsoever. But kind of going back to what we said earlier about my idea of finding ways to engage the reader, to get them excited. The Town Kid book about growing up in a small town, that started out as a collection of essays. So that kind of took place organically, one essay at a time, sending some to my local newspaper and eventually putting them into that Town Kid book. The others, I would say it was a matter of developing the story, and especially the case with Little Rex. It was that idea of okay, we're starting them out in the cemetery, and that was relatively easy to. First, they had to find him nourishment at the old Colonial Inn in Concord, Mass, and then they took him by the North Bridge where that Revolutionary War started, and around the town, and made stops. The cover of the book shows the stop they made at the library to show off all their books. But that one took place in terms of an arc in just where they made all of their stops and made sure that they showed off the town to this little Boston Terrier.
So I've been to most of these places that you're talking about.
Have you?
And my question is, how did the Boston Terrier get access?
How did he get access?
Yeah, I mean, I realize this is fiction, but I mean, there's a lot of places that
you couldn't walk
you
into
couldn't
a library
walk into with a dog.
Well,
Yeah.
that cover tells part of the answer, Rob, that he actually, the ghost one again show off their books and there's an incredible library there. It's more like a museum, busts of all these people. But anyway, they're ghosts, so they just disappear through the walls when they're ready to move on. they forget about him. So that cover actually shows the night watchman shining the light down on him, and he eventually does escape. Now, I'll just tell a quick story. The other interesting thing about where does he get access to these places, we found out during the research trip there that Walden Pond now is a state reservation, much like a state park. And we found out on that research trip that dogs aren't allowed on the grounds. So I had to figure out a way in the book. I decided to go ahead and make that point. But Louisa May said, no, we won't be here long, fellows. We'll tread lightly on Walden Pond. And so they did, and he got out of there without getting discovered.
So the elevator speech is, it's paranormal travelogue featuring a dog.
It's a ghost story.
There you
Absolutely.
go. Okay.
Yeah.
Shawn, I know everybody, all our viewers are anxious to learn more about your experience with writing screenplays and with the movie. And so how did you get recruited to write a screenplay for a major cinema?
Well, you never know if they're going to be a big movie when you start.
Yeah.
You can work, I've done a lot of writing in Hollywood, and some of them are produced and some aren't. And most of the time they're not, or they take a long, long time. Some movies like Forrest Gump, that took 10 years to get through the whole, from the time that the book was optioned until the movie finally came out. So, and that's with a very high profile, screenwriter and director. So you just never know. Sometimes they take just a year, sometimes they don't, and they fall apart because it's about aligning all these different elements. And if you're trying to produce, your job is to really pull those together. So sometimes writer-producers are doing that. And in my case, I was, I'd been writing screenplays, and I was entering them in competitions. That's a great way to get started, to break in. Putting them in competitions screenwriting competitions around the country. And one of the competitions I was in, it didn't win that one. It came in, I think, third at the Texas Film Institute, I think is what it was. But a movie producer happened to read that. A lot of times there's a lot of turnover in Hollywood, so people that work for studios one week will wind up, working on their own the next week. But they can't take any of the clients that they'd been working with or in the projects they'd been working on with them. Those are all IP that's owned by their previous employer. So they've got to build their own slate then if they start out on their own. So where to go? Well, screenwriting competition is a good place to find fresh voices, fresh talent. So that's why that works. So this producer found one of my screenplays, optioned it for $1. And in order to shop it, I needed to have an agent. So he got me connected with an agent at ICM at the time. And she convinced Warner Brothers to fly me out for 2 weeks. And she set up a ton of interviews. And that's how I got connected in the industry.
Interesting. So do you write, now that you've started writing novels, do you write with the big screen in mind? Do you cast your characters in the books?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, once you build that style into your approach, kind of a visual style, it's hard not to write that way. So I am a really visual writer. And in fact, sometimes that's actually a detriment because a novel is a much more interior art form. And I'm not writing for the camera. A screenplay is just stripped down, bare bones. It's a muscle car with all the seats torn out, and it's just, as weightless as it can be. And yet, any word that any actor says, anything that the director shoots, that's all described in the screenplay. The screenplay is kind of the architectural plan for the movie. But you have to be really efficient because it's very structured, 1 page per minute of screen time. And you have to strip it down and yet contain everything in what the camera can see, because the one word the director shouts is action, right? So you're only writing actions and dialogue. And that's very different than a novel.
I was going to say, does that affect your
does,
novel?
Yeah.
Because
it's
my
hard for me.
experience with other people who have been screenwriters that turn novelists are that their novels tend to be very word efficient.
Oh yeah,
There's not much flowery stuff in somebody who's been a screenwriter.
Yeah.
That becomes, I think, of Matt Goldberg.
Yeah.
As an example.
Yeah.
So to both of you, do your characters ever, your book characters, ever do things that you don't expect?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. Well, in the case of Little Rex, I would say to think that he would want to spend time with these ghosts. He was scared of them at first, of course, a little dog, and I don't think I expected him to react the way he did to these ghosts. I mean, it said it is a ghost story. One thing I want to be sure and mention too, Rob, along these lines, is the connection to what Shawn writes about with science, that there's actually a science lesson that kind of came unexpectedly at Walden Pond. In doing my research, I found out that science has taught us there's a lot of things going on at Walden Pond, not all necessarily positive. And this came out in newspaper articles, but there's global warming taking place, of course, everywhere. There's soil that's been just dumped into Walden Pond unnecessarily, samples of algae. So they found this out when the ghost went out there. Henry David Thoreau was pretty bummed out, of course, when he saw all the things that were going on to his pristine Walden Pond. So there's lessons there, what science has to teach us about what we're doing with the environment. So one of the things I've tried to do, this being for middle grade primarily, is give lessons about science and lessons, of course, about slavery. The famous abolitionist John Brown came through Concord 2 different times trying to raise money for his cause. So there are things that I found out doing the writing about the characters, and particularly the little Boston Terrier.
How about you, Shawn? Your characters ever surprise you?
I love it when that happens because it means that I've really, that they've come alive, that I've done enough character work that they take on their own personalities and their own integrity. And it also, it makes it, you're talking about whether or not a dog can get into certain places. That kind of obstacle is great for driving unexpected twists and turns in a plot and in character development. So I like when I write myself into a corner and then I have to figure out how am I going to get out of here, or how am I going to get my characters out of here, because it drives me then to find something that's unexpected, and that makes the writing process fun. I think the best writing is when you, at least for me, you start out with a game plan, because you have to have a game plan or a goal and a structure to start, but then you let yourself deviate from that as you go along, because that gives you unexpected freshness in your storytelling.
Do you follow an outline? Do you outline your books before you write them, Gary, or do you do it from the seat of your pants?
I would say outline in a very general sense, that knowing, again, for the Little Rex book, the various stops they were going to make. So I knew there'd be a chapter about the Old North Bridge and one about Walden Pond and other places that Concord is known for. So not in a detailed sense, certainly not like I used to do with accounting textbooks that almost page by page.
So you shed that bad habit.
I got rid of that bad habit, but it happens kind of, I think, more organically.
Okay.
But, yeah.
How about you, Shawn?
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I should say this book that's coming out, Battleground States, I wasted a ton of time by not doing any outlining at first. I just kind of wrote my way into it because I wasn't really sure where I was going to go with it at first. I had some general ideas, and that's one approach. And because ideas are a dime a dozen, I say, and it's the execution that really matters. And so you can have an idea that on its surface is really banal, but if you start writing on it, you can polish it into something beautiful. So I wound up throwing away thousands of words, that I wrote, and I know looks like you're running short on time.
Yeah, we're running out of time here.
Okay, but so in short, I set a goal, a game plan, but I don't have a strict outline. I've learned to do that.
I wish we had another hour.
Yeah, I do too.
Gentlemen, thank you, but we have run out of time.
I wanted to thank you again for having us on and for Calumet Editions publishing Little Rex.
Well,
Thank you.
yes, in fact, Calumet Editions is a sponsor
of the
this
program.
program.
Right.
So next month, Alan will be back to introduce you to 2 more great Minnesota authors. And enjoy. Go visit your local bookstore and buy the books of these 2 gentlemen. Good night,
you,
everyone.
Rob.
Bye, everybody.